Hello everybody, how are you guys doing? This is Rob of Rule of Two Review. Welcome back to the channel, and right now, the Nintendo Switch 2 is the huge hot button topic of conversation right now across the internet and across YouTube. Obviously, I've spent quite a bit of time on my own channel discussing it, and it's very exciting because in a world where the Switch 2 is 6 to 18 months away from releasing or being revealed, this is a big deal because any new console generation for any company, always exciting, brings with it new games, new controllers, new gimmicks, new whatever the heck. Nintendo very famously tries crazy ideas with each new console iteration. And so if a Nintendo Switch 2 is coming up soon, I think most of us can't wait to see what it's going to be. Of course, VGC's recent report is the most critical thing everyone is talking about right now because they seem to be hinting at a release window of next fall or winter or holiday, basically the back half of 2024. That seems to be the current target. They have some sources giving us information about a screen on the console, which would essentially be confirming that it will be another portable or hybrid device, which is something we didn't know for sure. But if this turns out to be true, if being the optimal word here, it would let us know that yes, Nintendo is considering, or continuing, I should say, the hybrid portable idea. But another thing coming out of that conversation is the idea of backwards compatibility, which is another topic that many of us have been talking about for a while, and we seem to be getting a little bit more of a glimpse into what Nintendo may or may not be doing when it comes to backwards compatibility for the next console. I think that most of us would agree that it is a very crucial thing for Nintendo to get correct to make sure that the Switch 2 could be successful. And based on these recent quotes and my own personal ideas and opinions on what's important, I want to really break down what we might be seeing with backwards compatibility and why I think it is one of, if not the most important thing for Nintendo to get right. By the way, I've taken a long break from reminding you guys at the beginning of every video to subscribe to the channel if you seem to like what I'm doing here. It's very funny and honestly kind of sad that as soon as you stop doing that at the beginning of every video, it's like subscriber growth grinds to a halt, man. I basically have stopped growing the channel significantly, I don't know, 6 months ago once I stopped doing that after crossing 20,000 subscribers, because I think the average YouTube video is better without someone always reminding you to subscribe at the beginning of the video. But I'm going to do a test. I'm going to add it in right here. If you like this video and you're not already subscribed, I hope you will consider subscribing to the channel to help me keep growing. So that's all I want to say about that. Let's get back into the good stuff. So I'm just going to come right out and say it, man. Without backwards compatibility, I think Nintendo will be facing an uphill battle. Backwards compatibility, nowadays, very valuable to the consumer, especially in a world where each console manufacturer has its own online ecosystem and millions of games are purchased digitally. It's very important whether you're talking about physical or whether you're talking about your digital library, when possible, to make your new hardware backwards compatible. The big debate on whether or not Nintendo really needs to include backwards compatibility for the Nintendo Switch 2 really comes down to the discussion many of us have been having on what Nintendo thinks is better for their business. Do they want to be consumer friendly and help make it a smoother transition for current Switch owners to go from the current 2017 hardware Switch, whichever of the three Switches you're playing on, Switch, Lite, or OLED, smooth transition from the current Switch into the next one. All of your Switch cartridges and all of your digital purchases are going to be immediately accessible and playable on that next device? Or do they want to pull the slightly greedier route, I'm going to say, the less consumer-friendly approach, and make it so that not only will your current Switch games not work on the new console, but they might also be reselling some of the current Switch titles as upgraded or definitive editions or deluxe editions on the new Switch. Now, of course, the prime example of why Nintendo may be considering this is Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. We've all discussed how Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, which is actually a last generation Wii U title and a great freaking game. I own it on both the Wii U and on the Switch. That game is to this day the best-selling title on the Nintendo Switch, and between both versions, the Wii U and Switch version, it's like well over 50 million units sold. I think it's even around 50 million units just on the Switch. The game was ported from the Wii U to the Switch only, I would say, 4 or 5 weeks or so into the release of the Switch. It was one of the first titles released on the console, so it's been on the market for pretty much as long as the Nintendo Switch has been on the market. But look at what it's done, man. 40 to 50 million copies sold of a last generation port on the Switch. It's crazy. And there are plenty of other games that have done the same thing. I mean, we all know and we all joke about the fact that half of the Wii U's library has been ported from the Wii U to the Switch with all of these deluxe and definitive edition versions. And I think that most of us have this concern that Nintendo has seen this success and is going to say, instead of being consumer friendly and making the next Switch backwards compatible, we would rather not do that and force people to rebuy newly released versions, deluxe versions of Switch games that they might release on the next console. Essentially saying, what if we release Breath of the Wild Deluxe and Mario Odyssey Deluxe and Luigi's Mansion 3 Deluxe and Bayonetta 3 Deluxe and Animal Crossing New Horizons Deluxe, Super Smash Bros. Ultimate Deluxe. The list goes on and on. What if they were going to release all of those games for a new, probably $70 price, not $60. I bet it's going to be $70 for Switch 2 games. What if they move all those games to the next console and just force people to rebuy them? Instead of doing patches that might update like the frame rates or the resolution for these games if you were to play them backwards compatible, or just make them backwards compatible without next-gen updates and patches. That's the essential thing. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, so successful, maybe it's going to convince Nintendo to do that. That is the big quandary, right? That is the big issue that we all find ourselves in, and that Nintendo probably finds themselves in. And so that brings us back to kind of the bigger thesis statement of this video. What is better for Nintendo to do? Is it better for them to do consumer-friendly backwards compatibility? Is it better for them, because of the bottom line, to force gamers to rebuy these games at a full $60 or $70 price? And I think it depends on which lens you want to come at it from. If you care more about Nintendo making money that you yourself aren't making, because you just want to support a big corporation because they're a corporation you like, you're going to say Nintendo should do the deluxe model and they should resell their games and not make it backwards compatible. Not make it backwards compatible, if I could speak correctly. And that's not how I feel. I feel like they should do the consumer-friendly model, and they should make it backwards compatible. Not only because I want it, but if I'm being honest, I actually think it will help the Switch 2 be more successful than if they don't go that route. Now, of course, it has to be stated that we don't even know what the physical media for the Nintendo Switch 2 or the next-gen console will even look like. There is a chance that the media will take a form factor that won't allow for the Switch 2 to play Switch cartridges. And if it won't play Switch cartridges and it can't be backwards compatible for physical media, then I think there's a great chance that it would be the same with digital. Although Nintendo has gone on record acknowledging the difficult situation transitioning from Switch to Switch 2 and the fact that they want to create the ecosystem where everyone's current digital infrastructure and their profiles and, in theory, their games they've purchased will transfer over to the next console. And if that's the case, then not only does that mean almost for sure our digital purchases will roll over and our Nintendo Switch Online accounts will roll over, if they do that, then I think they're also going to have to make physical games backwards compatible as well. I think it's important to note how successful and consumer-friendly Nintendo has been with backwards compatibility in the past. Now, I will give Microsoft and the Xbox Series X credit because right now, they've got a pretty decent backwards compatibility situation going on with Xbox games and Xbox 360 games, physical and digital, and it's great. I actually, as much as I'm not really a digital guy, I do actually buy quite a bit of Xbox and Xbox 360 games for my Series X, and I really enjoy going back to those generations and playing them on that console. Whether you're using Game Pass or whether you're purchasing them, that's great. But outside of Microsoft right now, I think in general, Nintendo has the absolute best track record for backwards compatibility by like several country miles. It is not even close. All you have to do, and I've brought this up in previous videos, all you have to do is look at the Nintendo Wii and the Nintendo Wii U. The Nintendo Wii is a striking example of how to be so consumer-friendly with your backwards compatibility. It's almost mind-blowing that this is something that really happened. And again, I've said this before, the Nintendo Wii basically came with the front end of a GameCube built into it because you could flip that little side door open and you can plug in 4 Nintendo GameCube controllers and you can plug in a Nintendo GameCube memory card. That is freaking wild. Not to mention that the disc drive for the Wii was meant to hold full DVD-sized Wii games, but it could also take and play GameCube mini disc games in the same drive. It is basically a GameCube plus a Wii in one console. And you know, we're not even going to talk about the fact that it was around the same power of the Wii. It was kind of the same architecture. We know the jokes about it's 2 GameCubes taped together, yada, yada, yada. That's not the point. The point is Nintendo chose something that they didn't have to do by allowing it to play GameCube controllers, memory cards, and games. That is mind-blowing and is absolutely one of the many reasons that console was a huge success. When it comes to the Wii U, that is something that not only was completely compatible with the Wii Remote and the Nunchuck and other Nintendo Wii accessories, but it also came in the box with a sensor bar to use a Wii Remote, and it played Wii games along with Wii U games. So again, those 2 consoles, the 2 Wii-era consoles, were just unfathomably fantastic when it comes to backwards compatibility. And so in my mind, while we don't know what Nintendo is going to do or planning on doing, there's no doubt in my mind that making the Switch 2 backwards compatible would only be a good thing. Could they make a lot of money by forcing people to buy Tears of the Kingdom Deluxe, you know, and Pikmin 4 Deluxe, Mario Odyssey Deluxe, like I said, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. Could they make a ton of money by doing that? In a lot of ways, sure, but I think that they would be discounting how much more comfortable a lot of consumers and gamers would feel buying a Switch 2, knowing that they could keep their entire Switch game library, especially their physical ones, and they could maybe sell their Switch and get that money to put it towards a Switch 2, and they can say, all of my Switch games are going to roll over to the Switch 2, and I can start buying Switch 2 games. I mean, here's the thing. Initially, it's going to sell no matter what, even if it's not backwards compatible. But if it is the long-term success of people knowing they can just move their library over to the new thing, it's going to help. That is the benefit. You get the initial burst of a lot of dollars by forcing gamers to buy deluxe versions of old games, but I think you get more long-term success and more long-term purchases of your hardware if you make it consumer-friendly, backwards compatible for those of us that want to keep our Switch games, but just move them onto the Switch 2. Nintendo talks about moving that Switch ecosystem onto the next generation to make sure the transition is smooth and successful. I'm telling y'all, the way to do it is backwards compatibility. The only small, tiny hint we have as to what Nintendo might be thinking with backwards compatibility actually does come from VGC's article earlier this week, where, and I reported on this in my last video as well, and I'll link it below for you guys to read that report and that article they wrote, but they heard from their sources that seems to be backed up by quite a few people, including some folks that I know and trust online. They basically have heard. It's tricky. The way it was phrased, and I'm going to paraphrase it here. The way it was phrased is that third-party companies who are not Nintendo are expressing concern to Nintendo about the console being backwards compatible, making it sound, and I'm reading between the lines, so we don't know if this is true, but it almost makes it sound as if third parties know that Nintendo wants to make the Switch 2 backwards compatible, but they're the ones telling Nintendo not to do it so that third-party companies can resell their games on the Switch 2. So maybe you bought The Witcher or Doom on the Nintendo Switch, and then they want to resell you a better version of The Witcher and Doom on the Switch 2. And so they're trying to pressure Nintendo to make it not backwards compatible, which to me is kind of insinuating that Nintendo's current plan is to make it backwards compatible. Again, that is not confirmed, and it's really just me reading between the lines from something VGC is saying that we don't even know if itself is true. So there's a lot of guessing going on here, but I think if you read that, if you trust that, and you hear the words I'm saying as I break it down, I think that's what we're getting from this, which to me, I actually view as a positive sign because, again, the insinuation is Nintendo might already be planning backwards compatibility for the Nintendo Switch. And if that's the case, I think it's a win all around. So none of us truly know what's going to happen. Obviously, we're in the very exciting and mysterious time where we don't know anything about the next console. But boy, oh boy, are we all having a ton of fun talking about it, predicting it, theorizing about it, making guesses, and hearing these weird reports. Many of them are clearly fake and garbage, but the occasional one comes out that feels a little bit more genuine, like VGC's last report. And so all we can do now is just enjoy this time period we're in now, where the Switch is great, and it's got great games. They just released Zelda. They just released Pikmin 4. We got 2 Mario games coming up at the end of the year. So the Switch is still releasing great games, but we're also excited about the mystery of the next console, which will make things even more exciting. Seems like it's going to be coming next year. Hopefully that means we're going to get info on Metroid Prime 4 sometime soon. Please, God, show me that freaking game. And so this is what's going on. This is why I think backwards compatibility is the smarter choice for Nintendo. I don't really care myself about Nintendo's bottom line on their dollar sheet by selling $70 Tears of the Kingdom Deluxe games. I care more about my ability to take my Switch games, play it on my Switch 2, so I feel nice and comfortable buying the Switch 2 as soon as I can get my hands on one. And I think most people feel the same way. So these are my thoughts, and that's about it.